I will tell you that being an angel to someone we think is beyond arm's length sometimes. We think we have to go somewhere to do it. We think we have to go to a foreign country. We think we have to go outside of where we normally are in order to be that angel. But I tell you, the most angelic potential you have is within arm's reach.
Welcome to The Lisa Show, where we take a good look at life. Hey, it's Lisa. Christmas is just around the corner, and I may or may not have already listened to the entire Sufjan Stevens Songs for Christmas album 47 times. Not sure, I lost count. But wow, does that album put me in the Christmas mood? It's a family favorite. And another thing that brightens my holiday is the Light the World campaign. You may have spied the red giving machines in your local city or seen them on social media. They're those vending machines that use donations to provide goods and services for people in need around the world. You can use your money to donate anything from a bag of groceries to school supplies to chickens and goats. Those machines are all part of the Light the World program that is sponsored by The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The program also provides a month of suggestions to help families and individuals find ways to light the world during the month of December. This year, the campaign is focused around lighting the world by being someone's angel. Now, I don't know about you, but that feels like a really tall order. I mean, angels do some pretty incredible things. In biblical times, they fed Elijah in the wilderness. They rescued Peter from prison, and they delivered the seemingly impossible news of a baby to a young woman named Mary. I mean, come on. Is it realistic to think we can even come close to being someone's angel? Well, we here at The Lisa Show set out to answer that question. We decided to ask you about the angels in your lives, who they are, what they've done, and the impact they've had. And I'm here to tell you, after listening to all these stories, I'm convinced that not only is it possible for all of us to be an angel to someone, but that angels are among us doing incredible things every day. In today's episode, we thought we'd share some of these stories with you that people shared with us. Stories of earthly angels like you and me doing the things that have blessed others. And I hope you'll notice that all of these stories are about what I like to call adjacent angels. These are the angels that are close by us, angels who we might rub shoulders with at work, at school, or even at home. The first story is from Erica Price, my producer. Her adjacent angel happened to be a woman in her congregation.
So one day while I was sitting in church, I received a phone call that my best friend who had been struggling with breast cancer had finally succumbed to the disease. It was one of the hardest moments of my life, and after the service concluded, my husband and I stood in the hallway of the church talking about the phone call. I was distraught with grief, and my husband was also visibly shaken and upset. And we were standing in a quiet corner, but apparently a few people had noticed our conversation. One woman who I had never really spoken to in the congregation approached me after my conversation and made some joke about me having marriage issues. She had completely misread my situation. She assumed that we had been fighting, and I really didn't have the emotional strength to correct her. So instead of giving me comfort when I desperately needed it, she left me feeling even more wounded than I had already been that day. Later that evening, there was a knock at my door, and I opened it to find a woman standing on my porch with a braided loaf of challah bread. This woman was also a member of my congregation, and she had apparently also seen this conversation that I had had with my husband. She quietly said, "I noticed something was wrong with you today, and I just wanted you to know that I was thinking about you." And then she handed me the bread. She explained that every Sunday she made challah bread, and she observed the tradition of praying for others as she made the bread. And she explained to me that as she made the bread and added each ingredient, that she said a prayer in my behalf, not knowing what was going on in my life, not making any assumptions, just knowing that it had been a hard day. As beautiful as that bread was, I think what I loved most about that moment is that she had not required an explanation from me. She just acted out of pure compassion because she had seen someone hurting and she wanted to let them know that they weren't alone and that someone cared about them. She made me feel so seen, supported, and understood, and she was an angel to me in the time that I needed it most.
Erica's story reminds me of something important. We often read of the miraculous acts of angels, but there are also just as many references to angels coming to just comfort people. I'm thinking of stories in the Bible like Hagar and her son in the wilderness, the disciples finding an empty tomb, and Christ suffering in Gethsemane. In each of these stories, angels brought reassurance and support. But we don't need to overthink what that support or reassurance looks like. It can be as simple as heartfelt gratitude. Paul Westover is a professor by profession, and he said one of the most angelic visits he's had is from a student who returned to say thank you.
As a professor, of course, I work with dozens, hundreds of students every year. Some of them I get close to and I remain in contact with, a handful. But most of them just go on and conquer the world, and you never really get to hear the end of the story. And you wonder if your work with them, really had an impact. You knew all along that you were just one small part of their educational experience and their growing up experience, but you always wonder. A couple of weeks ago, I had somebody come and knock on my door whom I hadn't seen in over a decade, and he had been a student in only one of my classes. And when he was at the university, I was really worried about him. He was just really struggling with some things. And he came back to remind me of a conversation that we had that had been really important to him, that had not only helped him at that moment, but had set him on the trajectory which later became his career. And he wanted to come back and tell me about it and what he had done and about his family and his career. And he expressed that he had shared this story with many people over the years, all the people except for me. And it was just so kind and generous of him. When he was in town to come and track me down, I was so fortunate that he was in my office. But that's such a lift, to a teacher to have somebody come back and say, you made a difference, especially on a hard day, which that was. And I think, all of us, when we're discouraged sometimes, need someone to come in and say a kind word and remind us that what we're doing is important.
Words of gratitude can be some of the most angelic things we could ever give someone. And teachers like Paul definitely deserve those words. Am I biased as a former high school English teacher? Maybe. And if my students are listening, feel free to email me or message me, whatevs. But what about other people that deserve our gratitude? Like the checker at Walmart, or the Amazon delivery driver, or our local fire department. We may feel gratitude for all of these things, but taking time to share that gratitude with these people is when it becomes angelic. Another way we can use words to bless others is to pray for them. Here's why this matters to Ben Hall.
Someone who's been an angel to me was two of my best friends. I was going through a really hard time, and I reached out to them and I was like, guys, I need your prayers. Please just help me out. And immediately they reached back and said, don't worry, we got you. And so it's friends like those that I love very, very much and am grateful for.
Words of comfort, words of gratitude, words of prayer. They can all be an angelic help to someone, but we can also be an angel to others without saying a word. This is a story from a woman named Shara Flores. Shara still remembers an anonymous angel in Wyoming who took the time to share Christmas with her family.
I grew up the oldest of 4 kids and with a single mother. And I was in the 2nd or 3rd grade, and we just had moved into their first house. We called it the White House, not because it was huge, but because it was a White House. And to us, it was big. It was our first home that we had lived in, because we had lived in apartment complexes that were smaller. So it was an exciting time for us. We had moved from a homeless shelter that we had been in for 6 months. And we were in this White House long enough to get to know our neighbors and make some friends. And there was a neighbor. He had 3 boys, and the middle one I remember being my age. And he did the 12 days of Christmas for us. I remember it so vividly because we were so excited every time the doorbell rang, we wanted to rush to the door and see who it was, and we could never see anybody. But we were always so excited, and the gifts were so great. My sister remembers we got casseroles and stocking stuffers, school supplies, and a special gift for each of us. But the one thing that I remember that meant so much to me was the night that we got our Christmas tree. It had to be one of the first nights. Somebody had knocked on the door, and we opened it, and it was a real tree there on our porch. And we had never had a real tree. It was so special to us because we got to water it, like we got to take care of it, and it smelled so good all the time. And it really brought the Christmas spirit to our home, having that real tree in there. And we were just so grateful for all the gifts. But that tree still sticks in my memory, and it brings back so many good thoughts and so much fondness of that guy who had done that for us. We found out like a year later who it was because we didn't know forever. I was so grateful for that experience.
Shara didn't know who her angel was for several years, but this kindness has made a lifelong impact. Her angel wasn't a heavenly messenger in the traditional sense. He was simply a thoughtful neighbor who gave what he could to a family in need. Things like a warm casserole and a fresh-cut tree. Cheryl Moss has also been blessed by kindness from her adjacent angels. It was those angels that got her through the sudden loss of her husband.
13 years ago, 2 policemen came to my door to tell me that my husband had been killed in a car accident on his way home from work. My own life has been greatly blessed by small and simple acts of kindness shown by others, especially when I lost my husband. Acts that to those that were giving them may have seemed so very small. Meals delivered, hugs in the hallway at church, books and toys that were given to my children to help them keep busy so I could cry in my room. Kind words, paper plates given to us so we didn't have to do the dishes. They may have seemed small to others, but to me, they were huge things that saved my life when at times I felt like I was falling off a cliff. And I will be eternally grateful.
So often we wonder what we could possibly do when people around us are suffering. But these stories remind us that it doesn't take a lot to be an angel to someone. Sometimes angels just bring hugs, kind words, or even paper plates. Angels are all around us, but more often than not, we are the angels that get sent to help our families. And I'm not saying this to toot my own horn, although, my kids better be listening and agreeing. But over the past several months, as we've collected angel stories, a common theme has emerged. Parents are usually the first names that come to mind when people think of angels. When we asked Ian Dahl about his angel, he said it was his dad.
When I was 7 years old, I had a form of leukemia that was pretty uncommon in children. It was much more common in adults, and this was back in the 90s, so there just wasn't, sort of a tried and true pathway to treating or curing this type of cancer. And so my parents were posed with, a number of options to try. The success rate was low for almost all of them, but they were super strong, decided to go with the route of a bone marrow transplant. At the time, the bone marrow registry was not very comprehensive. I don't think that there was a lot of people who had registered and signed up, and so they weren't able to find anyone that was an exact match for me. They tried my sister at the time because in theory, she had the same DNA as me. She should have been a good match, and unfortunately wasn't. They checked it out of 6 and she was like a 3 out of 6 or something. So it turned out that my dad was as close as they could find. It wasn't perfect. It was still really risky to try it. There can be some really bad outcomes if the body rejects it, and decided to go ahead with it anyway. So my dad donated, I guess in a very painful manner, donated bone marrow that was then given to me as a 7-year-old kid, and it worked, and it saved my life. And from that point on, everything went into remission and then never looked back since then. So that was amazing. Obviously, that's a huge thing, and something in my life that I'm very grateful and is a unique bond that I share with my dad. But the reason I wanted to tell this story was it wasn't just that. Having done that, he was put on the bone marrow registry, and about 15 to 20 years later, he got another phone call because he was an exact match for a complete stranger.
Without hesitation, he said yes. I believe he donated 2 more times for this person. And after a period of time, you're allowed to decide to choose to meet this person if you'd like. And both of them agreed to it. And so my dad flew out to Cincinnati and met this person and has now gotten to know him really well and shares another unique bond with that person. So I think it's just something that's just so cool that he's been able to do that for multiple people, for me and for this other person, and essentially save 2 lives. I think that's incredible. So I guess the angel that I would recognize is my dad.
Angels can be strangers on a bone marrow registry, but they also can be our dad. And I remember when my own dad was an angel to me and my husband. We were in our last month of grad school in the UK. We had 2 little kids and we didn't have 2 shillings to rub together, literally. We didn't know how we were really going to keep our family afloat, but we also didn't want to ask for help. But then I got a letter in the mail. It was from my dad. He said he just felt like we could use a little cash. Yes, we still used cash in the 90s. I'll explain what that is to the Gen Zs later. Not only had he sent us some cash, but it was just enough to feed and house my little family until we got back to the States. And I love that my dad followed his instincts and didn't ask if we needed it. If he had asked, I would have said something completely untrue, like, "Oh, we're fine. Absolutely splendid. No problem." I was really proud like that, but he didn't ask. He just acted, and I'll never forget how loved and seen it made me feel. Sometimes the angels in our lives are our dads, but don't worry, moms. We make the angel list too, and rightfully so. Now, I haven't given my kids money for grad school or saved them from leukemia, but I can think of a few things I've given my kids, like life and undying love. Well, after listening to people's stories, I realized that while moms may think that mothering is just what we do, it is also what makes us angelic. Here are just a few things that people said about their moms.
Somebody that's been an angel in my life is my mother. She's had a lot of patience with me over the years, and she's helped me to become the person I am today.
I would say someone who's been an angel in my life is my mom. She has taken so much time, starting from when I was just a little tiny tot, to read to me, to teach me how to read, to expose me to the best books she's found. I love that she gave me that gift.
Someone who's been the biggest angel in my life was my mother, who passed away about 20 years ago. She was someone who always had a higher opinion of me than I probably deserved.
Never did anyone ever mention that their mother was an angel because she was perfect. These women were angels because they were patient with their kids. They spent quality time with them. They thought the best of them. Somehow I associate angels with doing things that are flashy and loud and impossible to ignore, like angels appearing to shepherds in a field with shocking news and impressive singing. But none of these mothers' stories were flashy and loud. Actually, quite the opposite. These moms simply loved and supported their kids, things every parent can do, and those efforts didn't go unnoticed. But it isn't just parents that can be angels to their families. We can also be angels to anyone and everyone in our family sphere, including nieces and siblings. Here are Leah and Charles to tell you their stories.
There have been a lot of times where I've been kind of alone and needed to, talk to my mom or something, but my mom's far away, and I feel like my aunt, who lives like 20 minutes away from me now, has really stepped up and been really kind to me. I got COVID and I didn't have anywhere to go, so she let me come stay in her basement. And she had a little lunch tray, and 3 times a day she would bring me down some food and check in on me and give me drinks. And then there have been other times that I've gone over there just crying and needing to talk to someone. And I think she's really been an angel for me in the last few years of my life.
When I was younger, I paid to take a course, and it was really important for what I wanted to do. And I didn't take it seriously. I really neglected a lot of the work early in the game, and when crunch time came, I was too far behind. And on the day when everything came due, I came up short, and it was all for naught. And I felt so horrible. I felt like I wasted so much time. I felt so disappointed in myself. And I remember late one night, my older brother, without prompting, just picked me up, and he took me on a walk, and he just listened, and he said all the things I needed to hear, just that I wasn't a failure. It wasn't beyond repair. I could still accomplish what I wanted to. And he listened to all of my ramblings and rantings, and he was exactly what I needed. And when that night ended, I really knew that God had sent me the comfort that I needed to get through that.
I know we tend to denote angels by giving them gold trumpets and shiny halos, but Leah's and Charles's stories are making me realize that what angels really have is a listening ear and reassuring words. And according to my friend Stephen Sharp Nelson from the Piano Guys, we don't need an impressive wingspan to make a difference. Often, our best opportunities to be an angel to someone else are within arm's reach.
I will tell you that being an angel to someone we think is beyond arm's length sometimes. We think we have to go somewhere to do it. We think we have to go to a foreign country. We think we have to go outside of where we normally are in order to be that angel. But I tell you, the most angelic potential you have is within arm's reach. And my wife has proven that to me with very beautiful, sweet, gentle questions of, you seem really tired. What can I do for you? You seem to be struggling. How can I help? She is my angel in so many ways, but I love how she can ask just the right question to help me feel loved and valued. So that's my angel, and I really feel like if we want to be with an angel, if we want to be an angel to someone, start closest to you.
Stephen knows a lot of people, but I love that when I asked him who his angel was, his first thought was his wife, and that what made her angelic was something as simple as asking sincere questions. The people closest to us have better access to our lives and our needs than strangers do. I think that's why Stephen suggests we start there if we want to be someone's angel. If you're like me, finding angels among the people closest to me is not hard. In fact, I want to tell you about an anonymous angel that blessed our family several Christmases ago. Christmas can be tricky for a lot of people, and my first tricky Christmas came at the first Christmas after my husband was diagnosed with ALS. It was a weird time. We were trying to live in the moment and not borrow worry, just be grateful for our family, our time together, not knowing how long he would have living with a terminal disease. During this time, I was keenly aware about how everything would look as a memory, how the kids would remember this Christmas weighed heavily on my mind. I mean, it could be our last with Christopher. I was overwhelmed with the pressure of it. Then, one day, we got a large anonymous gift. It was a big black pillow with pockets in it for every day in December, a giant Advent pillow. And in each pocket was a gift card for an activity, food, or item. The kids were so excited. Every day we'd just take a card out of the pillow and see what activity we could do that day or save it for the weekend. Sometimes it was to go try the holiday flavors at the gourmet ice cream parlor. Sometimes it was to get dinner at Wendy's. And a favorite was to go get books at Barnes & Noble. And it was exciting because it was a surprise each day, something to look forward to and something to do. I don't know who the angel was who thought of us and planned this out so generously, but it was clear that they knew our situation and cared about us. I don't know if they had been through something similar so they knew what we would like, or if they were just inspired to do it. I don't know what their intent was, but I do know the effect. I felt like I wasn't forgotten. I felt like my specific silent prayer of, how are we going to make this Christmas feel special without me having to think and do everything by myself? That I hadn't told anyone about was answered in a fun, surprising way. And because it was anonymous, I could just walk through my day imagining it was anyone. And that created a sense of joy and gratitude in me, which is a really nice way to walk into the world. It created excitement for my teenagers, which is no small feat. And it was an encouragement to keep going. Our unknown future was full of things to be scared about. But this act of service also opened up our eyes to the fact that it was also full of people who would be willing to cheer us on as well. When I think of angels at Christmas, I think of this anonymous comfort and support. And if the angels who did this for our family are listening, I really want them to know that they gave us more than a pillow and a gift card that year. They brought us joy at a time when we needed it most. Every story we shared today has been about adjacent angels, angels that bless their neighbors, their friends, their family, their spouses, the people closest to them. I know there are a lot of needs in the world, but there are also needs close by, and those are the needs that we can answer today. We can ask our spouse how we can support them. We can assume the best of our kids. We can express gratitude to someone for what they've done. We can pray for a friend. We can take a neighbor a casserole or some paper plates. We can even give a Christmas Advent pillow to someone who could use it. We don't need a set of wings to be someone's angel this Christmas season. Just arms that are willing to reach out to those around us as we try to light the world.
The Lisa Show is a production of BYU Radio, hosted by Lisa Valentine Clark. This episode is produced by Erica Price with help from Blake Morse and Kenny Mears, with post-production by Gracie Davis. A big thanks to everyone who shared their stories today. The Light the World program is sponsored by The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Links to the Light the World resources and locations of the giving machines can be found in the show notes. If you haven't subscribed to The Lisa Show on YouTube, you can find even more content on our channel, including the Council of Moms, filmed live in our studios. As always, thanks for your messages. We read them all, and thanks for listening.